Thanksgiving has always been my sanctuary, my slice of heaven in the chaotic whirlwind we call life. There's an indescribable magic about it, the warmth of family bonds, the symphony of flavors, and that ineffable coziness that envelopes everyone gathered under one roof. This year, my husband and I volunteered to host for the first time in what felt like ages. We were bubbling with excitement, though I'll admit, a tiny knot of anxiety had taken up residence in my stomach. After all, hosting Thanksgiving for family isn't just a dinner. It's an orchestrated performance where every detail matters. I threw myself into the preparations with the passion of a master conductor preparing for their magnum opus. Weeks before the big day, I meticulously crafted a menu that would make even the most seasoned home cook proud. We weren't just planning a meal, we were creating memories. The centerpiece would be a duo of turkeys, one traditionally roasted to golden perfection, the other infused with smoky flavors that would make mouths water. A honey-glazed ham would stand proudly alongside them, glistening like a jewel under the kitchen lights. The supporting cast was equally impressive. 20 pounds of mashed potatoes, because let's be honest, is there such a thing as too many mashed potatoes? 2 generous pans of savory dressing that promised to transport everyone back to their grandmother's kitchen. Sweet potato casserole topped with a perfectly caramelized crust. Green beans prepared with such care they might make a vegetable skeptic reconsider. Cranberry sauce that struck the perfect balance between tart and sweet, and gravy. So rich and velvety, it could make cardboard taste divine. The crowning achievement, though, was my first attempt at homemade dinner rolls. My husband playfully teased me, suggesting I was going overboard, but I simply smiled and continued kneading. In my mind, Thanksgiving was the culinary Olympics, and I was going for gold. My in-laws, bless their hearts, volunteered to handle dessert. And when I say they brought dessert, they brought a veritable paradise of sweets. Trays upon trays arrived at our doorstep. Pumpkin pies with perfectly crimped edges, pecan pies that looked like they belonged in a magazine spread, apple pies that filled the air with cinnamon-spiced promises, cookies that begged to be sampled, and homemade fudge that threatened to steal the show. My kitchen counters transformed into a display worthy of a high-end bakery, and my heart swelled with pride at how everything was coming together. By the time we finished setting up, my husband and I were exhausted but euphoric. The table was a masterpiece of autumn elegance. The wine was chilling to the perfect temperature, and we were ready to welcome our loved ones into our home for what promised to be an unforgettable celebration. The day itself unfolded like a scene from a cherished holiday movie. From the moment I rose before dawn, our home was transformed into a sanctuary of tantalizing aromas. The air was perfumed with the rich scent of roasting turkey, the buttery essence of fresh rolls rising in the oven, and the sweet symphony of cinnamon and nutmeg wafting from the bubbling sweet potato casserole. Every corner of our kitchen pulsed with life, a carefully choreographed dance of preparation and anticipation. As the afternoon progressed, our doorbell began its festive chorus. First came my in-laws, their arms laden with those picture-perfect desserts that seemed to defy gravity. They were followed by a steady stream of cousins and siblings, each family adding their own spark of energy to the growing celebration. Our house, usually so spacious, soon filled with the kind of joyful chaos that only holidays can create. At one point, I found myself pausing in the doorway between the kitchen and living room, drinking in the scene before me. Children darted through the house like mischievous sprites, their laughter echoing off the walls as they invented some elaborate game known only to them. Adults clustered in intimate groups, wine glasses in hand, sharing stories and catching up on months of missed moments. In the dining room, someone was spinning tales of Thanksgivings past, while in the living room, my husband was engaged in an animated debate about football with his brothers, their passionate discussion punctuated by bursts of laughter. The crescendo of the evening arrived with dinner itself. As everyone gathered around the table, their plates piled high with carefully curated selections from our feast, I couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. The food was everything I'd hoped for, the turkey moist and flavorful, the mashed potatoes creamy and decadent, the dressing aromatic and perfectly seasoned. My gravy, which had been the source of so much anxiety, flowed like liquid gold across plates, earning appreciative murmurs from around the table. The moment that truly captured the essence of the evening came when my husband rose to make a toast. The room fell into a reverent hush as he raised his glass, thanking everyone for being part of our lives. As the toast evolved into a round of gratitude, with each person sharing their blessings, I felt my heart swell with an overwhelming sense of contentment. This, I thought, is what Thanksgiving is truly about, not just the food, but the bonds we share and strengthen around the table. After dinner, as the food coma began to set in, people naturally drifted into smaller groups. Some sought refuge on our comfortable couches, others gravitated toward the dessert table for second or third helpings of pie, while the children took their boundless energy to the backyard. My husband, ever thoughtful, pulled out a stack of plastic containers we'd bought specifically for leftovers. "Help yourselves," he called out cheerfully, gesturing to the containers. I smiled at his generosity, knowing we had prepared more than enough food for everyone to take home a plate or two. In that moment of warmth and contentment, I never imagined how this simple gesture of hospitality would come back to haunt us. The next morning, I woke up with that particular kind of hunger that only follows a big holiday meal, when your body has finally processed the feast from the day before and is ready for round two. I practically floated to the kitchen, my mind already savoring the thought of a turkey sandwich with a generous helping of mashed potatoes and gravy. The sight that greeted me when I opened the refrigerator stopped me dead in my tracks. Where there should have been enough food to feed an army, there was nothing but emptiness. A lonely bag of turkey wings and half a container of dressing sat in solitary confinement on the barren shelves. I blinked hard, convinced I must still be half asleep. But the stark reality remained unchanged. Our Thanksgiving feast had vanished into thin air. "Honey," I called out to my husband, my voice wavering between confusion and mounting dread. Did we donate all the leftovers to a food bank or something? It seemed like the only logical explanation for the disappearance of 2 turkeys, a ham, 20 pounds of mashed potatoes, and an entire dessert buffet. My husband emerged from the other room, drying his hands on a dish towel, his expression puzzled. "Donate? No, why would we do that?" He paused, studying my face. "What's wrong?" I gestured dramatically at the refrigerator, my hand trembling slightly. "It's all gone. Everything. There's nothing left but some turkey wings and half a bag of dressing." My voice cracked as the reality of the situation sank in deeper. His brow furrowed for a moment before his eyes widened with recognition. "Oh, I did see Joe and his family packing up quite a bit of food last night." The words hit me like a thunderbolt. "What exactly do you mean by quite a bit?" I asked, my voice rising with each word. He shifted uncomfortably, rubbing the back of his neck. "Well, they weren't just filling a plate or two. They had these gallon-sized Ziploc bags they were filling with turkey, mashed potatoes, dressing. I think I saw them taking whole dessert trays too, even the ones your mom brought." I gripped the counter, my knuckles turning white. 20 pounds of mashed potatoes," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. 2 turkeys, a ham, 2 pans of dressing, all the desserts. And you didn't think to say something when they were essentially clearing out our entire kitchen. The more I thought about it, the more my blood began to boil. This wasn't just about the food, it was about respect, about basic human decency. Before I could stop myself, I was reaching for my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found Joe's number. When he answered, his voice was irritatingly cheerful, almost smug. "Hey, thanks again for yesterday. Everything was delicious." I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. "Joe, I have a question for you," I said, keeping my tone deliberately light. "How's your refrigerator holding up? I imagine it must be quite full after last night." To my astonishment, he laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not an apologetic one, but a hearty, self-satisfied chuckle. "Oh, you wouldn't believe how well I managed to organize everything. It's packed to the brim, but I got it all in there perfectly." The casual pride in his voice was the final straw. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice now sharp as a knife. "You took almost every scrap of food from our Thanksgiving dinner, food that I spent days preparing, and you're actually bragging about how well it fits in your fridge." "Well, you did say to help ourselves," he replied, his tone dripping with condescension. I was just following instructions. The conversation that followed was like something out of a surreal theater production. No matter how I tried to explain the concept of reasonable portions or basic courtesy, Joe remained stubbornly obtuse. When I finally demanded he return the food, his response was both shocking and infuriating. "Fine, if you're going to be so greedy about it, I'll bring it back." The line went dead before I could respond. An hour later, a knock at the door announced Joe's arrival. He stood on my porch, wearing an expression of smug satisfaction that made my blood pressure spike, holding several mismatched, dented pots. Without a word, he thrust them into my arms. The contents of these pots were nothing short of a culinary nightmare. What had once been carefully prepared, separate dishes had been transformed into a horrific mishmash. Turkey floating in gravy, mashed potatoes reduced to soup, sweet potato casserole mixed with green beans, and desserts crumbled throughout like some sort of twisted garnish. It was as if someone had deliberately set out to create the most unappetizing combination possible. What is this?" I managed to ask, staring at the chaos in the pots. Joe shrugged, that infuriating smile still playing on his lips. "You wanted the food back. Well, here it is. All of it. I just made it easier to transport." The audacity of his response left me speechless. This man had meticulously packed our food in separate containers when taking it, but now that he had to return it, he dumped everything together like some sort of spiteful stew. "You took this food home in proper containers," I pointed out, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. "You managed to keep everything separate when it benefited you." He smirked, clearly enjoying my distress. "You asked for the food back, and I brought it back. I don't see the problem." Without another word, he turned on his heel and walked away. leaving me standing in my kitchen with pots full of what looked like the aftermath of a culinary disaster. As I heard his car start and drive away, I stood there, staring at the pots of ruined food. This wasn't just about lost leftovers anymore. It was about the complete lack of respect, the willful destruction of something I had put my heart and soul into creating. With Christmas approaching and the prospect of hosting again looming on the horizon, I couldn't help but wonder, how do you continue opening your home to people who treat your hospitality with such contempt? The pots sat on my counter like evidence in a crime scene, a stark reminder that sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones we least expect. As I began the sad task of disposing of what remained of our Thanksgiving feast, I made a silent vow. Never again would I let someone take advantage of my generosity in such a callous way. Some lessons, it seems, come at the cost of 20 pounds of mashed potatoes and a whole lot of holiday spirit.